Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Racer. This week, I speak to a driver who currently competes in the Australian TCR series, driving a HMO Customer Racing Hyundai i30N, and has raced some pretty cool cars along the way as he's progressed from category to category with some pretty impressive results. So, to find out more about his motorsport career, I welcome Josh Buchan. How are you tonight, Josh?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Thanks for the intro, and thank you for having me.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
You did, yes. It is I guess the last year or two, yeah, being in TCR, it's helped with the last name pronunciation. A lot of people have struggled with it in the past, but no, you nailed it. Good job.
Cool. Thank you.
I don't
Um,
take any offense, so.
nah, that's all right. Well, I look forward to speaking to you tonight, Josh. As I mentioned, you've done some pretty cool stuff in motorsport so far, but where did it all start for you?
I mean, I guess it started like a lot of us in karting. So I was quite late to the party, though. It was the day before my 16th birthday. It was my first go-kart race. So I was very, very late
Mm.
into the piece. Reason was, I mean, as you know, is it's quite an expensive sport. So I struggled to get money to go racing. So when I was probably 12 or 13, I wanted to start, but I was too young to work myself then. So basically, from then, I started working with my uncle on weekends. Fast forward a couple of years, and the maxed out credit card from my dad, we bought a go kart, and that's basically where it all started. And yeah, for it to end up here for now is pretty incredible considering.
Yeah, so you started in go-karting. How did you get your passion for racing? Did anything really attract you to the sport?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, my dad used to rally in the 80s in the UK. So one of his claims to fame is he beat Colin McRae in a stage back in the 80s or something like that. So he was a driver. When we moved out to Australia when I was quite young, he started selling cars. And that was in the era long before your time of sort of VT, VX Commodores, like Scaife became
Yeah.
famous for racing, and also Japanese imports like your Skylines, Supras, Silvias, all that sort of stuff, like all those cool cars that are very expensive now. So he would sell them. That was his job, and he'd bring them home as his company cars. So I would basically be in the passenger seat of all these cool things that made sick noises, and I just liked going fast. I didn't really care about racing or anything like that. I just enjoyed going quickly. So as soon as I was old enough to realize how to do it myself, which was karting, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't care about the racing. I just wanted to go fast, and that's effectively where it all started.
Yeah, so obviously you started in go-karting and how long was it until you actually started racing at a state level and competing with some of the guys at the front?
Yeah, it's a good question. My first year, I uh, in that time up in Sydney, you had, I guess, your three major clubs. You had Eastern Creek, Lithgow, and Newcastle, and they were kind of the three major clubs in that metro area. Wollongong as well, but not so much at that time. And club days for at the time G National Light, C National Heavy, they were 25 kart fields on a
Mm.
bad day. So all the state champions would rock up. I mean, I remember guys like Blake Skibberus, who ended up racing V8 Utes and Aussie cars.
Oh yeah.
He was a two or three time Australian champion. So in my first, second race, I was racing against those guys. So I never really had an easy race. I wish I did. I would have picked up a win a bit sooner, but um, yeah, pretty much right from the start, I was racing really, really good guys. I mean, even Joey Mawson,
Oh wow.
he
Yeah.
was a bit younger than me, but he was at the same events, just running a club show. So club shows back then were pretty crazy and out of control. So I guess right from the start, and I did my first state title in my first year, and did each of them after that. So yeah, didn't really have any easy route from the start.
Yeah, so obviously karting is a struggle with it being expensive and very competitive because there's a lot of young
Mm,
racers who are trying to prove themselves. So obviously after a while you made your move into your first category in racing cars, Formula
yep.
Ford. How did that
Mm-hmm.
all come about?
So that was an opportunity through a go-kart team I was with at the time. So in my very first go-kart meet, I met a guy named Jason Varley, who was two-time Australian champion or four-time Australian champion, was a Holden Young Lions contractee member, which was basically HRT Supercars team sort of junior crew. So he was a big deal at the time, and we became quite good friends anyway. Fast forward a few years, he started his own karting team, and I was kind of like the spearhead for it, if you like. And a guy in the team was a father of one of our team members, and he had raced Formula Ford in the 90s against, Craig Lowndes and all those sorts of guys, and had a relationship with the team in Sydney, and basically came up to me one day. I was racing KZ at the time, and said, "Oh, what are you doing next year?" And asked a few questions, and basically gave me the number of a guy named Paul Liston, who runs Listec Race Cars. They design and build their own cars in Sydney. And he said, "Give them a call. They're looking for someone." And I thought it was a bit strange because, as you'd know, Formula Ford, like, it's like a 60 grand operation to do a state series. And I'm going, I don't have $60 to rub together. So called Paul. He invited me out for a test, which I thought was the coolest thing ever, because in go-karts, Formula Ford is like F1. It's crazy. You look at it like it's F1. I did anyway. So I did a test. It went really well. They invited me back for a second test. And it just sort of spiraled from there. They were very good to me, and we went on to do some good stuff. And that was my original break. So very lucky to come across those guys. And it started with a phone call. I remember getting the number and looking at it on my phone and thinking, I won't call it. What a waste of time. Called it, and here we are. So always dial the number that you're given.
Oh, well, that's some good life advice, man. I'll keep that one in mind. But yeah, so you got the call, made your way down. These days it's a bit more expensive than 60G, unfortunately. To do a season with one of the top teams. So
yeah, I think with Sonic you'll be down like 250, 200. Is it something like that?
yeah.
Yeah. Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. So especially as a driver who's trying to move up, it's a bit hard since we don't have the finances that the other competitors have, I guess, that can afford that. So lucky them.
Yeah, I feel your pain, man.
Like I race for Formula V, and I bought the car in pieces for 2 grand, and I built it up. And then I smashed it.
Oh no, really?
Yeah.
I looked at Formula V when I wanted to get into cars, because that was all I could think I could afford. And Dylan Thomas, a guy up here, ran a team called CXC Racing, and yeah, he wanted $2,200 a round. And I looked and I thought, far out, if there's 6 rounds in a year, and that would have been me spent. So yeah, like, you did well to even get a V. So that's good.
I bought one of his older engines for the car.
There you go. Wow.
So yeah, we were running that, but we had some troubles, so we'll eventually figure it out.
Is it a good motor, or did he sell you a dud?
He sold us a good motor. It's just the carby. It didn't come with a carby, so we had to put our own on them because we knew we didn't really have much of an idea. But now we're sort of, as we're going along, we've sort of picked up the idea. So hopefully we can get the engine to its full potential.
I'm sure once it's going, you'll start slaying everyone. Don't worry.
That's the goal, man. But anyway, back to you. Did you ever do Island Magic in Formula Ford?
I did, actually. I did that. That was my first ever car race. So my first ever car race was in Formula Ford in Duratec, about a year after my first test in the car. And that came about basically because the team was sick of their full paid driver shunting the car. So I was testing. Basically how it would work was I would test the week before this guy would race the car, and we would get a setup and basically say, here you go, here's how it is. And the times I would do in testing would constantly either put me on pole or put me on the front row or something like that at a national level. So eventually Paul just thought, screw it, let's throw him in for a race. I paid for my tires and my entry. That was all I had to pay. So that was great. and yeah, it was Island Magic. So I'd been to Phillip Island doing some driver coaching with
Mm.
Mercedes Benz. But yeah, we turned up and
What Mercedes?
was
Sorry.
so Mercedes Benz. Basically every brand in Australia, most brands anyway, do driving events for you know for their customers, potential customers, and that's probably 50% of my work, doing work for Audi, Hyundai originally, and all sorts of brands you can think of without just naming names, but pretty much every brand you can think of, I instruct for them in this country, and drive alongside them on events. So that's basically how I'd been to Phillip Island and all these events before. Was I'd gone down there as a driver coach on an AMG event. So A45, C63, GT,
Oh wow.
GTR.
Yeah.
So all the range. So I knew the place. It was good. We went pretty well. We were in the top sort of 3 or 4 in practice. But at the time, Yokohama, the tire that Formula Ford runs on, the AO48, that was its first full year in competition. And there was a massive variety in batches between tires and in how old they were. So we took 2 new sets down for Island Magic, ran a new set on the Thursday, and we were half a second off, if that, which was a bit of a result in a car that had never really run in the top 10 in a national field. Put the other new set on for qualifying, and they were a second and a half slower. So yeah, pretty crazy. So we really had to battle throughout the races. I think we ended up finishing 5th or 6th. I can't remember, but it was again 20 car field. So I was quite happy with that for my first ever race. And I'm pretty sure who was in the field. There were some guns in the field. You'd have to look back, but
yeah, I can dimly
that
imagine.
would have been some good dudes.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to do Island Magic in supercarts, because when
That would have been fast.
yeah, during COVID, I think one of the categories couldn't make it for Island Magic because they just didn't have the drivers who could commit. So they let the supercarts do it, and it was really fun racing at Phillip Island because we get to go there anyway, but to do it at Island Magic made it a bit more special. And then later,
Island Magic's cool.
yeah, and then later this year we'll be racing it in the V's. But yeah, after Formula Ford, you raced with Gilmore Racing team in 2019. They've had a few talented drivers come through. They've 2 I've spoken to, John Collins and Noah Sands.
Oh yeah.
So John Collins used to race, and now Noah Sands race for them. So did you enjoy your racing in the F3s?
F3 was great. It was probably my most difficult season because it caught me off guard. I'd basically done a couple of races in Duratec, and then I went and did pretty much a year and a half in Kent, Formula Ford. And we'd won everything in Kent. We'd won Island Magic, Bathurst, did a whole heap of cool stuff. So I was thinking at the time, I'm like, I got this shit sorted. I'm cool. So got the call up for Formula 3, which happened at John Collins' wedding, ironically enough. So at John Collins' wedding, Errol Gilmore was there, and I basically got chatting to him and said, look, if you feel like winning this year's series, give me a call. If not, then I'll take it as no offense. Anyway, he called me up and we did the year together.
Yeah.
And it was really hard because those Formula 3 cars are basically like, if you've driven supercarts, it's kind of like doing KZ supercarts around a clothesline, one-handed, constantly. They're so physical to drive. I mean, I remember at the bend in Adelaide, it was 4 degrees for qualifying, and air was coming not through the visor, but just through the gaps in how it does. And it was so cold, the air, to a point where I'd get a tear over my eye. But then in the braking zone, as I hit the brakes, the tear would fall out of my eye and hit the visor. So like, that's the force these cars have. The Gforce while turning, and the size of the cockpit. I'm about 6 foot tall, and I didn't really fit properly in the car. So I'd end up with scrapes all over my arms and, bruises on my hand and everything after a round. So it wasn't until the last 2 rounds of the year I really started to figure it out, and I got a pole and pretty much should have won the last round. So it was a really testing year for me, but it was really good because I'd learnt to kind of not give up, deal with trials and tribulations, and dig deep to drive a car, because there's nothing more demoralizing than not being able to drive a car to how fast your brain wants to drive. I was being
Yeah.
limited by my body. So F3 was awesome, and it's probably the best thing I've done because the cars are so unique and so fast that the learning that you take from them applies to everything I've driven since. It's quite unreal. So F3 was excellent.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine how physical it would be on your body with the high downforce. And you're saying like the G forces through the corners. Like I in the Formula V's, we obviously don't go that quick, so I haven't quite felt it. Like in karting, you feel it a lot, but with the Hans device, I think it definitely helps. So
Yeah.
like in karting, when you used to get a bit of G force, like I know I do, like your head would sort
Yep.
of get lots of pain in the sides. Because you've actually got your head still, do you still feel it even though your head's still?
Yeah, I mean, in F3, you've got probably that much room either, so probably 2 and a bit inches either side of your head. So your head will, and that was a big problem I had. My neck wasn't strong enough, so your head would lean. The other issue with F3 is that in the current cars in Australia, behind the steering wheel, you've got a radio and you've got a shift cut, and you have to pull your sequential lever as you pull the shift cut to change gear. So often only this part of your hand is doing any work on the steering wheel. So you're coming out of like a second gear corner, smash the gas in quali, and your head's being ripped off. You're only turning the wheel with that part of your hand, and you're trying to change gear. Your whole body cops an absolute beating. But the neck was really tough because in karting, at least you don't spend long in each corner.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your home track down
Um,
there?
Bendigo, but Oakley was the toughest down in
Okay,
Melbourne.
so I guess the first turn of Oakley, the fast right-hander, that's probably the longest corner there, is it? Or last corner would be the
Um,
longest corner?
well, they've changed it all now, so I wouldn't really know anymore.
Oh, okay. All
They've
right.
redone
So
the
we'll
whole
on
circuit.
right, okay. Well, on the old track, they'd probably be the longest
Yeah.
longest corners, like longest period you spend in a corner. Um, when you think of a circuit, like a car circuit, somewhere like a turn one at Phillip Island,
Yeah.
by the time you're straight to turning to straight again, that time of actual turning is huge.
Mm.
So that whole period, your neck's just being strained. So you can deal with it at the start, but you'll often find you'll turn, and then your head will start to,
Mm.
fall off its base. And what that does is that messes with your depth perception. So yeah, your neck is just the most, yeah, it's the most
Mm.
crucial thing in those cars. If you can hold your head upright, and you're in good stead. If not, then you're in for a long race. I had
And
plenty
you
of them that year.
and you got to work in there.
Yeah, it's so odd. It's so
Mm.
bizarre. Like there's nothing you could do in the gym that would help to drive the car. Absolutely nothing. I tried. You can get fit, you can do whatever, but there's always something that would screw up because you're not driving. So that was an issue I had that year.
Mm.
There were 6 events, and I didn't do any testing through the year. So the first 3 events were about 2 months apart, and then the last three were like within 6 or 8 weeks. So just having those back-to-back rounds, I was fit as by the end of the year. But training heaps through the first half of the year wasn't a waste of time, but it didn't
Mm.
yield any results like actually driving the car.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, it's just sort of getting used to the car, and then once you get used to it, I guess you can sort of work around the pain in a way. Like the more you
Yeah,
drive it,
well,
the more.
your body just gets used to it. Like even going from sixth to second, I'd get a blister on my hand. Um, you drive a car on like a Friday, and you came back the next Friday, and you wouldn't get a blister that time. Whereas if your hand had time to get soft again and all the rest of it, you'd get a blister. So just simple stuff like just time in seat was so valuable. And once you did get on top of the car and you were comfortable and you could
Mm.
do 20, 30 laps straight without any pain, man, they were so cool. They were so fast.
Mm.
still makes everything I drive now look rubbish compared to an F3 car. It is the best.
Yeah. So, did you always want to continue with the open wheelers, or did you, because you have driven production cars as well, so did you sort of prefer to shift over to production cars, or did you want to keep going with the open wheelers?
Yeah, again, good question. I did want to do some stuff in production cars and cars with a roof because just out here, there's more scope to do more when you have a roof over your head. I guess at the time, all I'd driven was open wheelers. I was so comfortable in them that, and all the while doing F3, I was still racing Formula Ford and testing Formula Ford. That, that's what I thought I wanted to do because that's what I knew. In fact, in 2020, after F3, there was an opportunity to do S5000 for the year. COVID messed that up. So who knows what would have happened if that came about. But now I look at S5000, I go, oh, I'm not really too keen on getting back in an open wheeler. I quite like a roof and a door and all that sort of luxury. So yeah, I did want to do cars, but at the time I was focused on single seaters. And just happy being there, to be totally honest.
You've also done a few enduros in your time as well, and it's pretty exciting that you now race in the TCR series with the HMO Customer Racing team. As personally, I would really like to be in this category. It's so awesome to watch, and there's very talented drivers. Like I've interviewed Luke King, who could have won the championship last year, and I also interviewed Lachlan Manif, and you're
Oh
now
yeah,
the third driver I've interviewed. So
yeah, cool.
I'm going to interview the whole paddock maybe.
Yeah, hit them up.
Yep,
They'll all
just
say yes. They're all pretty good.
yeah. But I've seen you drive before, and I've really taken notice on all the drivers and how they all drive differently. But what did you find different about driving front wheel drives that have so much power?
Um, the thing with the TCR car is, compared to every other front wheel drive car I'd ever driven, they behave absolutely abnormally compared to any front wheel drive. They don't handle the same to anything I've ever driven. They're very, very tail happy the entire time, unless the tires fall out from under them. But they're basically set up to turn and you deal with the rest. So I've driven some very, very good front wheel drive race cars before in the past, Honda Integras and even road car Hyundai i30s converted to more of a race car. And they're very progressive in the front. They're very predictable in the back, whereas a TCR car is totally unpredictable in the back and very sharp in the front. So first time I tested it, I just couldn't believe how much body roll they had because I was used to open wheelers. So that was probably the first thing I noticed. And then just the lack of rear grip. It felt like a Formula Ford. So it's probably why I got along with them quite well, is I wasn't worried about them sliding around or moving or anything like that. So yeah, I actually didn't find the progression too difficult. I think what I found was I started learning more about the technique to drive the car once I started winning races. I understood, oh, okay, I just won. That's what I did. So I guess once I realized, how to drive them quickly, I became a bit more autonomous while driving, and to the point I don't think about it now. I just know what I'm doing. So yeah, but they are very, very different. Very, very different.
Yeah, so obviously you've overcome the differences and you've already had some fantastic results, winning a few rounds, being a pole sitter and punching at the top of the field. You seem to be doing well, and it seems that Sydney Motorsport Park looks to be one of your favorite tracks. Would you say you agree?
Yeah, I love Sydney. Sydney's great. I've always liked Sydney, even before I thought I was any good around there. So yeah, it's nice that it's 20 minutes from my place. And yeah, every time we go there, we seem to clean up. So if it could be a 6 or 7 round championship at Sydney, I probably wouldn't argue. So yeah, we like Sydney.
Well, next race, all you got to do is beat Dylan O'Keefe and Tony D'Alberto every race, and then it'll be really close. I'm not really sure how the point system works, but you're very close because I've got the standings here. You're only third in the championship on 379, and Tony D'Alberto's on 412. So, however,
Yeah, okay.
I'm not really sure how the point system works in TCR, but
It's 50 for a win in race 1 and race 3, and it's 40 in race 2. So, yeah, he's less than a win ahead. And if it wasn't for a disastrous round at Phillip Island, I'd be in the lead by a mile at this rate. So, yeah, it's all to play for, definitely.
Well, next round will be your chance to shine, I guess, and hopefully put in the results to get you right back to the top where you belong.
Hopefully so. Thank you.
As mentioned lots of times this interview, you race in a Hyundai i30N. What do you like about the car? And you're obviously very close to winning the championship or being in the championship lead. So, do you think there's still a great opportunity for you to come back and secure the title?
Yeah, I think I'm as good a chance as anyone in that top cluster of drivers. Even from the first round when we did quite well, championship was on my mind straight away. Well, the drivers will say I'm not thinking about the championship. That's rubbish. I was thinking about it from qualifying 1 with our tyre strategy at round 1. So, without sounding arrogant, we always knew we'd be in the fight if things went to plan. So far, 3 out of the 4 rounds they have. I guess it's just really a case of avoiding carnage when it's there. That's something that Tony's done quite well, and that's why he's out front. Myself and Dylan, we're probably the 2 drivers who have been in some carnage and still managed to, score some good points. So I think we're as good a chance as anyone. The actual car itself, the i30, is a brilliant car. It's no question the best TCR car out there. However, because of that, it is BOP, balance of performance back. So, we're the heaviest, highest with the least amount of power. So our lap time will always be quite good, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult to extract that time. So that's just the penalty you have for having a good car. The one thing that we do have on our side is that when we go to an event, we've never had any handling issues with the car since I've been involved. Whereas a lot of teams up and down the grid will have issues round to round. Our car's always super balanced, super fast. It's usually just a bit of engine or a little bit of tyre wear through a race that we might suffer with, and that's because of the BOP.
Yeah. Obviously, it's very good that you're able to, still put it towards the front, even though the car has a restriction on it. So, say restrictions were a thing. Do you believe the Hyundai would be miles ahead?
Yeah, if there were no restrictions, we'd win every race by a lap. It would fly into the distance. In 2019, TCR Asia had a 20-car field. 6 of them were Hyundais, and the top 6 were the Hyundais. So they were a very dominant car in the late 2010s, and we're paying for that now with how much performance reduction the cars have had since then.
Yeah.
They are the best car, and they're just BOP'd back to everyone, and everyone's BOP'd up to us. So at the moment, the strongest car in TCR Australia is the new Audi, the brand new Audi J Hanson's. Yep. That's the fastest car by mile, and that's because it's BOP'd for a new generation. So it's a rocket ship. It's like following a V8 supercar.
Jeez. Well, just quickly, what was the Tarmac Rally sprint that you did recently? If I'm correct, with your partner Lauren, who's your co-driver.
Yep.
Yeah. Has Lauren done any co-driving or rally before this?
No. The most amount of co-driving she's done is probably with me in the rain on the streets when I had an old SS Commodore, and I'd make her film me do skids in legal parts of the road, as you can imagine. No, that was great. So that just came about. Hyundai is a sponsor of the White Line Rally Sprint up here in Sydney, and they, as a part of my deal, I have a Hyundai i30 as my everyday car. And so basically just took it there one night, put some stickers on it, threw Lauren in the passenger seat for something to do, and we went there and came third outright until the last session, which was drying up, went. So I think we came 5th outright, but my sort of in-house teammate Brendan Reeves, who's a full-blown international grade rally driver, was there in another I-30, and he had his co-driver reading notes and all that sort of stuff, and we smoked him. So that was quite funny. That got a good reception from everyone. But yeah, they're great events. Those sort of, I guess, to plug the name of your pod, that they're grassroots events, I guess, where there's all sorts of different cars and people, and it was good just to be a part of a pretty stress-free race/event for once, rather than, you know, cameras in your face and pressure to qualify and people trying to kill you every corner. So it was nice.
Yeah. So, is there still a dream car or category that you'd like to race in, and what would it be?
I guess the last thing for me, as you said, I've been very lucky to drive a lot of cars from, you know, pretty much every road car you can imagine. I mean, craziest road car I've probably driven on tracks, in McLaren Senna. That was pretty cool.
Jeez, yeah.
But, you know, every Ferrari, every Porsche, you know, with the work I do, I get to drive them. So road cars, there's not too many that I'm kind of missing out on. But in terms of a race car, the last box I want to tick is a GT car, GT3 car. I actually haven't driven one of those. And that's something I'd love to do in the future before everything goes electrified. So yeah, race a GT car would be excellent. I would drive a supercar, but in terms of my racing, it's pretty unrealistic. I'm quite focused on TCR. So yeah, GT3 car, that'd be my pick.
And obviously, you've talked about your driving instructing. So when you're not racing, do you enjoy helping other people improve their driving skills? Do you find it a bit of a hobby?
Yeah, well, I guess it started off as just something to do for the sake of doing it and earning a bit of cash, really, when I was racing karts, and then it just sort of exploded. I don't really advertise the fact that I do a lot of it, but it is my full-time job between racing. So racing takes up 30% of my time, I feel, and then the other 70 is event days, brand days, and other sort of driving work. So yeah, I do. It's great. I mean, I could be worse. I could have a real person's job. So I'm avoiding that for as long as I can. So yeah, no, it is good, and it is quite rewarding seeing someone, you know, who's done quite well for themselves away from the track, and then come to the track and see gains and see how different personalities improve throughout the day. So yeah, it's very cool stuff.
And last but not least, do you have any supporters or sponsors that have helped you along the way and are still with you that you'd like to thank?
I guess the main one as it stands is probably Hyundai, the car company. So they've been very good to me. I met them over 7 years ago on a driving event, and they've sort of always kept me around their scene and put me into the position I'm in. Barry Morecambe, the owner of the team, owner of HMO Customer Racing, him and his company of Direct Plasterboard, they've been a massive supporter the last 2 years, which has been excellent. And then everyone who's just given me a break throughout my karting days, the guys who first helped me at my first event, I'm still friends with one of them. Well, I'm still friends with all of them, but one of them, two of them actually, who I met on my very first day, I still hang out with regularly. So yeah, I try not to forget where I came from, and everyone who's helped me along the way, I try and stay in touch with. The Gilmores in Queensland, the Paul out here in Sydney with Formula Ford. So yeah, look, I've had an enormous help along the way, and you know, all I can say is if you're upfront, honest, and be a good person, then help gravitates towards you. So if you keep chipping away, you'll never know where you'll end up, especially with how young you are as well.
Well, thanks, Josh, and I guess thanks to everyone who helped Josh along the way. Obviously, he's now in TCR doing great. So it's awesome that you were able to speak to me tonight about your racing, Josh. And thanks so much for coming onto the show to talk to me because, like you said, you're a very busy man. When you're not racing, you know, you're working full time. So I really do appreciate it. And you've really achieved a lot through your career, you know, so far with Formula Ford, you know. I'm trying to think of the statistics. It was pretty amazing. I think, yeah, you won 17 out of 19 races in the New South Wales Formula Ford Series.
Yeah, sounds about right. Something like that. It was a
Yeah,
good run.
there's plenty more to come for you. You know, you're really in the championship fight for TCR. And, hopefully he can win the championship since you're so close. And to all the viewers, make sure you follow Josh on Facebook and Instagram, and I will add the links in the comments. So to everyone else racing this weekend, remember to drive fast and take chances safely, of course. And I'm hoping to get back at the Bendigo Sale Yards for another Motorcana in the Gets. So if you're in the Bendigo area, make sure you head down and check that out on Saturday the 16th of July. Thanks, Josh, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, buddy.